トビデオ
Time to get back to basics. I've been slaving away over a hot word processor and video timeline to bring you in some sizzling fresh long-form content for y'all, and frankly, I need a break. Producing 2 well-researched videos that go past the half-hour mark in just a month while juggling a full-time job actually does carry a human cost, believe it or not. But since I am a burgeoning content creator at the mercy of a heartless algorithm, vacations are off the table. No! So I'll do the next best thing and go back to the true bread and butter of Kyoto video, 80s anime. And not just any 80s anime, of course. I'm talking about 80s anime that is full-blown aesthetic. And luckily for you and me, I found the perfect OVA that is just what I need to recharge my batteries. "1987 was no doubt a watershed year for anime. The year that gave us both Robot Carnival and Neo Tokyo. The year that director Yoshiaki Kawajiri and a little studio named Gainax got their first big breaks. The year that television gave us 80s anime staples like City Hunter and Kimaguri Orange Road, alongside the memorable second seasons of Fist of the North Star and Mapletown. This year is also, arguably, the year where the OVA format is beginning to reach its pinnacle. 1987 is the year where we get a lot of the big influential titles associated with the decade, with Bubblegum Crisis, Dangayo, and Legend of the Overfiend because, yes. But nestled between the cleavage of all those important works is a small, slightly unknown, but definitely unforgettable title that goes by the name of Toei. Yeah, what she said. Yo. This is one of those anime that has escaped from 99% of the general otaku community, but to the remaining 1%, the name Toei will instantly jump out at you. From the accounts of people who collected anime in the early days of anime fandom, Toei was regarded as somewhat of a holy grail of a title. It was only issued once with a limited release on Laserdisc, VHS, Beta, and VHD in its home country. And once an unofficial fan sub began circulating in the 90s, Toei began to gain a reputation as being an ultra-rare collector's item. There's even been some apocryphal stories about how the Laserdisc was sold for around $6,000 on eBay. But thanks to the magic of living in a digital age, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Now we can just find a fan remastering version online that has both a clean picture and the fan subs hard-coded into the video. 1,000 pardons in advance. But aside from existing in the memories of dedicated anime old heads with money to burn, Toei is uncharted territory for most. But I think that could easily change. In this day and age, young retro anime fans like you and I like to enjoy the oldies because they carry with them a certain aesthetic. And Lord knows Toei carries a lot of that aesthetic. But the thing is, Toei is not as broadly, 80s as other 80s anime. Rather, it embodies a very specific part of the 80s, and it does so in a way that you just can't help but get hypnotized by it. But the specific question is whether or not style and embodying a specific point in time is enough to carry an hour-long OVA. Is there depth to this photograph, or is it all just flashy wrapping paper hiding a thin plot and shallow themes? First, what exactly is the story of Toei? Toei, the OVA, was an adaptation of a manga by Atsushi Kamijo that ran in Weekly Shonen Sunday from 1985 to 1987. Running for 10 volumes, it managed to capture the hearts of quite a few in its short time in the sun, namely the then young visual kei movement of Japanese rock music. One group, Penicillin, even took their name from a group seen in the manga. The general gist of the manga is that it follows a young man named Toei Fuji, yes that's his real name, hyphen and all, and his band which he is the lead singer of, Gasp. The band Gasp are considered to be one of the best punk bands in the Tokyo area. They consistently sell out shows and have a veritable army of fans among the young rebellious outcasts of Japanese society. The record companies, however, see none of this. While they recognize Toy's talent, stage presence, and good looks, they believe he is squandering his potential by staying with his band. They would much rather prefer he be a straight-up pop star like their biggest draw, Yoji Aikawa. A good chunk of this story is Toy and his band trying to get success without having to give in to the recording industry's desire for Toy to sell out.
Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but for me, the beast doesn't include selling out.
The other half is devoid of Toy's relationship to his #1 fan and girlfriend, a tiny girl who likes to pretend to be a cat named Nia.
Get it? Get it, 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 get it.
So basically, it's a story about a band wanting to make it big while not compromising their ideals, as well as a story about two outcasts estranged from mainstream society and forging a loving relationship with one another. It's a punk rock tale as old as time. Now, as I've stated before, Toy carries with it a lot of stylish aesthetic. And it shows off that aesthetic with flair. This is most likely due to some of the members on the creative staff. On one hand, you've got character designs by the always undervalued Naoyuki Honda, a man who really has a knack for designing characters with a gorgeous sense of detailed realism without sacrificing any of their emotiveness. It's a style that you would usually associate with high-budget projects, but Honda makes it work anywhere while keeping a level of quality to it. Even with a mid to low tier budget title like Toy, Honda can still have his characters carry a lot of emotion with even the subtlest of facial expressions. This extends to the overall direction of Toy because Honda, who was also animation director, really shows an eye for photography in this anime. While there are quite a lot of these still shots that's typical for a niche OVA, there are a lot of these flourishes that it feels like it's shot from a concert or a music video. Like this brief 3-second shot of the camera that starts at the back of the drummer and zooms through the drum kit to a shot of the guitarist. It's kind of weird to think they did this shot without the aid of any kind of computer. But I think the real star of the show would have to be the art director, Shinichiro Kobayashi. If there was an art director who definitely knows how to create an amazing visual style, it's most definitely this man. Looking at his resume, it's practically all he does. Kobayashi makes this stylish music video tone that really comes to life. Thanks to him, there is not a single shot of this anime that looks visually boring. And sometimes it's through the simplest shot compositions, like having a segment where Gasp just practices could be fine, but adding VHS static filter to that segment, and not only do you get something visually interesting, but also a segment that underlines how gritty and unrefined they are compared to the clean professional pop acts. Speaking of band practice, it would be embarrassing if I didn't talk about the music of this music-themed anime. Despite being about a punk band and the punk scene in 1980s Japan, the music of Toy is less centered around punk and more centered around an eclectic hodgepodge of early alternative rock and experimental avant-garde pop. This is due to the music being under the supervision of Masayara Matsura and his band Psy S. Yes, the very same Matsura behind the Parappa the Rappa series. Matsura, in my personal opinion, was the right choice for this series. Not only do the songs fit the general tone and setting of this anime, but they also tie into the overall theme of how separate the two worlds of the mainstream record industry and the underground music scene really are. It's all in the sound, really. The music that's associated with the slick, polished mainstream pop machine emphasizes the harsh synths and overproduced drum machines of the music, which reflects a sound that's cold, artificial, and lacking any sense of realness. Meanwhile, the music that is associated with Toy and his crew is built on warm guitar chords and catchy melodies with a hard edge. It's music that sounds rebellious, yet inviting. It sounds like something that actual human beings made and not a machine. All in all, it's an anime that's both a feast for the eyes as well as the ears, thanks to a crew that obviously knows what they are doing. But is that enough? We've discovered before how just having an interesting visual style and direction isn't enough to fully carry an anime. California Crisis may have had a unique art direction by trying to emulate the pop art style that was popular in the decade, but with its overall story being a whole heaping lot of nothing, all it amounts to is just being a dated novelty. The story of Toy certainly handles itself with a lot more competence than California Crisis, but that doesn't mean it's without its own little set of issues here or there. First, the OVA kinda already assumes that you know who these characters are. This OVA doesn't really start off at the beginning of Toy's story, but really more at the midpoint. And it does not ease you in with any character introductory cards or even a standard as you know line at the beginning. And while this does make the dialogue feel a lot more natural and doesn't interrupt the flow of the anime by having the story so far moments, a lot of new viewers will be spending most of their time playing connect the dots with character relationships when first viewing this anime. One such instance would be how casually Toy and Nia's relationship is just dropped on us, considering its buildup is such a huge part of the original manga. A huge part of Toy is exploring the relationship of two people who feel ostracized from so-called normal society. The theme is barely there in this anime, and Nia's presence is just to serve as some light comic relief and to show us that Toy isn't just some cool as ice punk. So people going into this blind might be wondering who the hell is this cat girl and why is she always following Toy around like a pet. But the anime not fully explaining every character isn't too much of a deal breaker because the OVA story is actually quite simple. The whole point of Toy is one band's journey to make it without selling out to the man. The OVA is basically a microcosm of that entire premise compressed into 1 hour, with story beats that even the most inattentive viewer could follow with zero problems. Here's how it goes. Gasp has a big concert coming up. Record company wants Toy to sell out. Toy tells them to shove it. Record company organizes to cancel said concert and place of their own. Drama ensues when one of the members of Gasp threatens to leave because of this.
自分ができないバンドなんてよ。バンドじゃねえよ。
But Toy and his band are able to triumph by holding a rival guerrilla concert across the street. The band gets back together, and they have a small yet meaningful victory against the soulless record company. The whole story is something that you could call a bit cliche. It's something that every wannabe artist wants to hear. That you are better than those blood-sucking corporate types and that you will triumph against that system because your art is just that damn good. I don't think it makes the story bad per se, I just feel like I've heard this story a million times before. But regardless of its simple story, I do think there is some substance beneath Toy's style. And it comes from realizing that Toy's aim was not to make a compelling story, but to capture a moment in time. While we associate the punk movement with the UK and the USA, Japan's punk movement was just as diverse and influential as either of those two scenes. The Tokyo scene, which is what we see represented in this OVA, aped a lot of the sound from American bands such as the Ramones and the New York Dolls, while also having the theatricality of the UK punks. The sound of the Tokyo scene was very diverse as they could range from the poppier, more melodic bands such as the Blue Hearts and Shonen Knife, to the faster, more aggressive bands like Gauze and Gizmo. It's even said that the Tokyo scene invented the hardcore punk genre with the band SS, and that bands like Minor Threat and Black Flag just popularized the sound. But the Tokyo movement was always considered to be the most accessible movement in Japan, which is why it gets focus here, especially when you compare it to the more avant-garde Osaka movements. But the difference between Japan and the West with their punk rock scenes is that in the West, record labels were happy to court those punk bands because rebellion sells, and as long as they didn't violate any obscenity laws too much, they could still get a reasonable amount of play on the radio and MTV. Japan, on the other hand, has a record industry that heavily censors itself to meet the demands of a more conservative and conformist society. And considering that the Japanese punk movement was extremely leftist and had a crowd that consisted mostly of the working class, foreign nationals, and disaffected youth, most, if not all, the Japanese punk movement operated exclusively underground, which kinda suited them because the uniting factor of all Japanese punks was the DIY ethos. They didn't need industry approval to make good music, they were already making it in their basements and in live houses. So even with police crackdowns, industry resistance, and the disapproval of polite Japanese society, the punk movement of the 80s still thrived and later influenced a lot of other bands who would become popular decades later. To us Americans, the story of Toy might not resonate with us because the story of a group of young artistic bohemians having one small triumph against the man just seems so standard to us. But for the young Japanese people of the 1980s, it's a story that resonates so much harder. It's a story that captures feelings that the young punks of Japan felt at the time. The feelings of being seen as a freak and an outcast by society. The feeling of camaraderie between your fellow punks regardless of style and sound.
うちのメンバーも楽しみにしてるんですよ。
誰？
友達。
友
イの知り合いって変な人ばっかしだね。
But most importantly, the feeling of being young and idealistic and using that idealism to get one over on the older, more cynical people in power.
相川洋二を超えられるかもしれないわ。
え？誰だって？
Toy himself could even be read as the representation of everything every young artist wants to be. Creative, charismatic, beloved by his fans, and despised by those in authority. He's a rock and roll Jesus. Toy does not want to concern itself too much with a story about the rise, fall, and resurrection of a young punk band. Frankly, it doesn't have time to do that. It instead wants to capture a feeling of a specific group of people at a specific point in time. In this respect, Toy is a very dated OVA. It decks itself out in the fashions, in the locations, and in the music that was popular amongst a specific counterculture from 30 years ago. There's nothing timeless about this anime. And you know what? That's perfectly okay. Not everything has to be timeless to be considered good. Sometimes a work can just be a snapshot of a specific era. Something that captures the feeling of being a young punk in the 80s, drinking Coca-Cola in the classic can, flipping through vinyl in a crowded record shop, waiting in line for an outdoor concert with people who are dressed like witches. Toy's appeal is something that exists beyond just being loaded chock full of you get the idea. It was an anime that was made in the moment. A fantastic, if very idealized look at what it was like to be a young punk in the 80s. It's a nostalgia trip for a time that many of us have not experienced. And that's why I like it. I urge you to track down this anime because it's something that you have to look at if you're into retro anime. Goofy Cat Girls notwithstanding, it's probably the realest retro anime I've covered on this show thus far. When you watch this anime, you feel like you're there being a punk in Tokyo, an outsider taking on a bland corporate system and coming out on top for one brief shining moment. Toy may have a simple story, but just like with music, it may not be the lyrics that are important. What's important is how that music makes you feel.